emotion imaginable is in those Psalms. We're going to look at one that lifts up just the joy of connection to God. Hear these words from Psalm 34, verse 8. "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him." Okay, so this Wednesday, we have our Fat Tuesday on Ash Wednesday pancake dinner. So we've got pancakes. Been talking a lot about brothers over the last few weeks. So with that in mind, I have a story to tell you. It was Saturday morning. Mom was making pancakes. And the two boys, which were Kevin, age 6, and Ryan, age 4, were sitting at the kitchen table, anxiously awaiting fresh pancakes. And as Mom, and if you've ever done that, you know that if you're the maker of the pancakes, you never get to actually sit and eat with everybody else. You eat what everybody else has done, or you catch one along the way. So Mom is making them. The two boys, Kevin and Ryan, 6 and 4, are impatiently waiting. And while they're waiting, they're fighting over who gets the first pancakes off the griddle. Back and forth, they're fighting over who gets the first pancakes. Well, Mom sees this as an opportunity. Mary, they would call it a teachable moment. Mom sees this as a teachable moment. So she says, "Now, boys, you know, if Jesus were here, he would say, 'Let my brother have the first pancakes.'" And then she kind of let that set for a second. And then she said, "Do you understand what I'm trying to say?" And Kevin, the older boy, said, "Mom, I think I do. I think I understand what you're trying to say." And then Kevin, the 6-year-old, turned to Ryan, the 4-year-old brother, and he said, "Ryan, what Mom is trying to say is, you be Jesus." So the last week of the long journey home, we have finally finished the journey, finally made it home. 8 weeks. 8 weeks. That's hard to believe. Looking at the prodigal son. As always, Reader's Digest version, right? I promised it every week. Here it is. But if you're sick of it, this is the last week you got to hear it. So that's a good thing. Dad, 2 sons. Younger son wants his inheritance early, gets it, runs off, squanders it on wine, women, and song, ends up feeding pigs, wants their food, doesn't get it, crawls home to Dad. Dad forgives him, throws a big party. Older son comes home, he's hacked off. Dad says, "Buck up." The end. So where are we? Well, we are in the very last step. The son has done all the squandering and all the crawling back home. The big party is in the midst. The older son has come back, found out about it. Last week, he really just railed out on that porch, that same porch where Dad had waited for the younger son to come home. He went out looking for the older son, and out on that porch, they had that conversation. And the older son said, "I've done everything right. I've never disobeyed you. I've always followed your orders. And I've done everything you've told me, and you didn't even give me a goat for my friends." That's exactly where we left off last week, which brings us to the last little bit of the story today. Hear these words from the Gospel of Luke 15, 31 through 32. "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So Dad comes right at him with a response. And I don't know about you, but I find Dad's response very tender. It's a very tender response, parental response, very tender, especially from a dad. He says, "My son." Did you notice that? That's how he addressed him, "my son." The literal Greek word that he uses translates to "my child." That even sounds more tender and more relational to me. He says, "my child." There's great love that he shows for his son because Dad loves his older son. Dad loves both of his sons. And then did you notice he said, "Everything I have is already yours." Why would you worry about something like a goat or what I gave to your brother? Because everything I have is yours. What I have is yours already. He's showing the older son that you have value. You don't need the party. You don't need something to validate who you are. You have great value to me. And then I love what Dad says. He says, "We had to celebrate. We had to celebrate." It wasn't, we really should celebrate. Or, I was thinking about it, son, and we ought to do this. It wasn't even I had to. He says we had to. We had to. There's a strong sense of necessity and urgency in the way Dad describes that to the younger son. To the older son. There's a great urgency and a great importance put on that. And I think there are two truths that remain in this story. First, and maybe foremost, is we have a home. Now, you're going, yeah, I'll be driving there when I'm done here. Well, we have a home with God. We have a home with God. We have a home in heaven. And when we are lost then, when we are lost from that home, it's because we have strayed. Because God is always there and God is always welcoming. He's always wanting us home. So when we have strayed from our heavenly home, it's because we have done the straying. It's because we have a God-shaped hole in our heart and we try desperately to take things from the world and jam them in there to fill that up. Money, cars, power, fame, whatever it is. We take all those things and we try to cram them into that God-shaped hole, and they never fit. They never satisfy. They're never enough. And it's because only God can fill a God-shaped hole. The only thing that can fill that. We are made to deeply connect with God. So the first truth is we have a home with God. The second truth is Jesus is always looking for us. He's always looking for us. He is actively looking for us. He is aggressively looking for us. And he is passionately looking for us all the time. The Good Shepherd is actively looking for his sheep. And the Bible offers us example after example after example of that. And it not only shows that Jesus is looking for us, but he's always willing to look for us, even in the most unlikely of places. He comes to us in the middle of our lostness. By the way, spell check does not like that word, lostness. But that's where he comes to us from. Being found is the same as coming home. When we are found, we have come back home. Okay, so the prodigal son, it's about a son being lost, right? So the question, I've been kind of hinting in this all the way along. Who's lost in this story? Which one of them is lost? The younger son? Yep. The younger son is absolutely lost. There's no question about that. He's obviously lost. But I would argue that the older son is lost as well. He's just as lost as the younger son. He just doesn't know it. It's not as obvious because he's there. He's there, but he's lost. He never strayed from the path. He never broke the rules. And yet he still somehow manages to miss out on the gift of his father's extravagant love. He's always done what he was told to do. But he misses the fact that Dad actually loves him. He also doesn't seem to really have a good handle on forgiveness. The older son doesn't seem very interested in forgiveness. Remember, he can't even bring himself to claim the younger one as his brother. Your son, he says accusingly. But did you notice what Dad did right here in the very end of this story? Dad, the father, he corrects that. Gently, quietly, but he corrects that. He reinstates that relationship. The older son says, your son. And when Dad replies, he says, this brother of yours. He just quietly and just amazingly reconnects by changing your son to this brother of yours. I think the truth is both sons change throughout the course of this story. Both of them experience some change from the beginning to the end of this story. The only character who remains constant in this story from start to finish is the dad. Dad is the only character who remains constant. And that's not by accident. It's also not by accident that this is often called the greatest short story ever written. Really, the prodigal son is sometimes referred to as the greatest short story ever written. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't disagree with that. I do think, however, that maybe the story, while great, is misnamed. I don't think the story should be called The Prodigal Son. Because regardless of which son you think the prodigal is, they are not the hero of this story. The story is not about either of the sons. I think the story should probably be called The Loving Father. Because this story tells us a whole lot more about a father's love than it does about a child's sin. The younger son. He was not found and brought back to life because of some great spiritual revelation. Think of that. He didn't have some great awakening, some blinding light on the road that brought him back. He didn't come back to life because of some great spiritual revelation. He doesn't suddenly get his act together and clean himself up and change his evil ways. None of that happened. But remember, like every good fisherman, God cleans the fish after he catches them. That's when you clean the fish, after you catch them. The turning point happens when the younger son not gets his act together. It's when he comes to his senses. When the younger son makes a wise choice. Think about that. He doesn't clean his act up. All of a sudden, one day he wakes up and he goes, "This is stupid. This is just stupid. Why am I doing this? I don't have to live like this. I have a home. I have a father. Now, maybe he won't take me back as a son, but he'll take me back as a servant. I have some place to go. I don't have to do this." So, when everything is said and done, what is this story about then? If you had to boil this story down to one word, what would the word be? And you could make a compelling argument for all sorts of words. You could easily say this story is about forgiveness. You could say this story is about sin, about relationship, about family, about greed, about redemption. You could preach a whole series on any one of those words and have it be what this story's about. They're all appropriate. They're all accurate. But the word I'm going to offer up today is not one of those, but it is this one. Go ahead, Travis. Reconciliation. Reconciliation. That's what the story is about for us. Now, you can call that reunion. You can call it resolution. You can call it restoration. You can call it whatever you like. But reconciliation is that which is at the heart of this story. Because this story is about a family who's broken. That's what this story is about. Now, did you notice that there seems to be no mom in this story? We never hear anything about her. We have to assume that for whatever reason, she's out of the picture. Got dad and the two boys, and the relationship between dad and the two boys, individually, between dad and the younger son, and between dad and the older son, and apparently the relationship between younger and older son even, all those relationships are strained at best. At best, they're strained. But when push comes to shove in this story, it's dad. It's the father who steps up and seeks reconciliation. He could have been really hacked off at the younger son. He could have led from that. He just could have been mad at him. Could have put on his dad pants and busted some heads because the younger son squandered all of his money. He didn't do that. Instead, he offered love. He offered compassion and caring and understanding and forgiveness. Dad manages to set aside his own agenda. He manages to set aside his own frustration. He manages to humble himself, and he brings his family together. Dad did all of that in this very short story. Dad is the clear and present agent of reconciliation in this story. And I would argue that reconciliation is at the heart of who we are, who we're called to be as Christians. I mean, we're human. We have strained relationships, right? Hopefully most of your relationships are really good, but we're all thinking about some right now that we have, that we wish were better, that we will confess are not that great, they're strained at best. But we're called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And therefore, we're called to humble ourselves. We're called to offer the olive branch. We're called to be the one to do that, to step out in faith because we exist to connect people with Jesus Christ. Because the bottom line is, and I get some pushback from this occasionally, religion is often about rules and regulations. I don't mean that to sound as negative as it probably does, but religion is often about rules and regulations. Faith is about relationship. I tend to not be a terribly religious person. I try really hard to be a faithful person. And our faith is built on relationships. It's built on relationships with each other, and it's built on a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if we place a high value on relationship, then reconciliation should be the thing that we always seek in our lives. It has to be at the core of who we are, of what we do, what we strive for. So my question is, as we prepare to close this series, what are the strained relationships in your life? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and tell us about them. But again, we're all thinking what they are. What are they for you? What are the strained relationships in your life? Who are you estranged from? Who is it that you used to be close to and life has got in the way and you are estranged from now? I want to tell you this morning that God calls us to reconciliation. Now, I want to be clear. I want to be clear because I am not naive enough to think that everything works out rosy all the time. That other person might be unwilling. They might be unable to take the first step. Then you do it. Then you do it. You take the step. You reach out. You offer your hand. You seek reconciliation. You try to repair the damage that's been done. But also being clear, you can't force somebody to do that. Just because you offer doesn't guarantee somebody's going to reciprocate. I understand that. I understand there are some relationships where you could try until you're blue in the face, and they are simply not going to offer back. However, you might do everything right. You might do everything right, and you still can't rebuild the relationship. You simply can't make them, force them to reconcile. And that is a genuine risk of stepping out in faith. If you try to reconcile with somebody, you are risking the fact that they will reject you. No doubt about it. However, if you do everything that you can, even if they won't reciprocate, you get a peace of mind. You get some closure. You get that peace of mind that you left no stone unturned. So with all that in mind, who do you need to reach out to? Who needs your forgiveness? And who do you need forgiveness from? Whoever that is, whoever you think really needs your forgiveness, you've been withholding it, give it to them. And whoever you need forgiveness from, seek it. They may not give it. Want to be clear, they may not give it. But if you try your best, you know that you left no stone unturned, and God will give you a peace, even in the midst of that. But whoever it is, don't wait one more day. Don't wait one more day. Life is simply too short. Every day is a gift. No day is a guarantee. And when it's too late, like the song said, when it's too late, you will wish for one more day. Don't put yourself in that position. Today is the day. Today is the day. One last thought on the prodigal son. This is the third of 3 stories that Jesus tells right in a row. He tells 3 stories, boom, boom, boom. This is the third of them. They're all about something that was lost and now is found. So he tells 3 in a row. This is the third one, all about lost and found. But that doesn't simply offer up 3 ways to state the same thing. Even though he tells 3 stories about lost and found, they are very different. The first story, about the 99 sheep left back and the one sheep is out and Jesus, the shepherd, goes after it. That sheep was lost because it didn't know any better. There wasn't any intentionality, just didn't know any better. Second story is about the lost coin and how hard the person looks for the coin. Well, the coin in that story is lost through absolutely no fault of its own. This story, the younger son is lost, but the younger son is deliberately lost. He chooses to go out and be lost. He chooses to turn his back on his family and his life. So you got 3 examples in a row. One where it just happened because they didn't know any better. Second one happened through no fault of their own. Third one happened because they made a bad choice. But the truth is, God can overcome our lack of understanding. God can overcome the seduction of the tempting voices that threaten to drag us off the path. And God can even overcome our deliberate rebellion of heart. God can overcome anything because He is always out looking for us when we have strayed. Seek reconciliation. And if you feel like you've strayed, know that God is calling you back home. I close with this scripture from Ephesians 4:32. Be kind to one another. Be tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Would you pray with me? Father God, I thank you